Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Stanton, and I'm the publisher of the Worcester Business Journal and the person in charge of all of our events who makes the trains run on time. Chris Prosser said to me, you were supposed to start 7 minutes ago. So, I jumped up here, and we have for those of you who signed up for this program, I, too, along with you, am really looking forward to getting into hearing from our speakers and hearing from our panel. So I'm going to just facilitate some introductions. We are very pleased to be bringing you this Doing Business in China event for the very first time. You read a lot about doing business in China. There are a lot of stories about it that sort of pop up in the news, and the more attention you pay to that market, the more you realize that it's extremely critical for our country, and specifically, I think there's a lot of opportunity for our region. So, ergo, a very regional business journal sort of helped with some partners put together really a very certainly international flavored event. So, I want to give special thanks to the folks from BDO who were really critical when we sort of had this idea and were putting it together and helped us form how to put this session on. Our friends at the Clark University's Graduate School of Management, both of them are our sponsors, and I'd like to thank both of them. We'll hear some comments from each organization. And our event partners also have been really critical in helping us get the word out throughout the region and throughout the state. Those event partners include AIM, the International Business Council, the Mass Export Center, and also Mass Manufacturing Extension Partnership, Mass MEP. And there's literature from each of those organizations, and I'm sure some folks here from each of them as well. And so the number of services and the amount of information you could take in China can't be done in a day or a week or a month or a year. Forget 2 hours. But connecting you with partners and organizations and folks with a lot of deep knowledge on that market is really what this event is about. And I think we'll have some good discussions. So I would first like to welcome up from BDO, Catherine Moy, who's the assurance partner with the Boston office and a business line leader. So, Catherine.
Thanks very much. You can be comforted by knowing I don't have my reading glasses on, so I'll be incapable of reading any prepared remarks whatsoever. Therefore, I probably won't use the 3 minutes designated, and we'll get maybe back on schedule. So I'll have them there as well. So thank you for joining us. We're delighted to be a sponsor of this event. We are as delighted to be doing business in China as we are to be doing business with the Worcester Business Journal and our other co-sponsors, Clark University and others. So it's terrific to be in your company. Obviously, the topic is of timely interest given the fantastic turnout. I know the breakfast is good, but I think it's the topic that really was the draw, so thank you for coming. You may know BDO as the 5th largest accounting organization in the world. You may not know how long we've been doing business in this very area. We are married to Central Massachusetts since our Gardner office opened in 1924 and is still active. We now service the area from our Boston and Gardner facilities. I am Boston-based, but a Southborough resident. Amongst us here in the room, we have my partner, Todd Berry, who's a Grafton resident, Nick Zone, who's a Marlborough resident. Dan Jones is not in Worcester County, so we're not going to give him credit for that, but he is born and bred in Worcester, so he's giving that tagline heavy weighting in his favor. So we are very much a part of this community and very happy to be doing business with our clients and prospects here. I might just ask my colleagues in the rooms, the ones I named and the ones who live outside of Worcester County, to just stand for a second so you know if they're with you at your table. Joe Middleton, I noticed that you didn't stand up, so I'm calling you out on that. So thank you for coming. The reason we were so energetically interested in being a sponsor of this event is that we, with increasing frequency, are working with clients in the China region. We are also meeting almost always with questions about expanding into China with our prospects and new clients. So we now need a helping hand in getting business done overseas, and especially in that region where business practices are evolving, and you really need somebody who understands the ins and outs and the culture and chemistry of how things get done the way you need them done there. Lucky for us, amongst us, we have a very fine partner who spends the entirety of his time dedicated to that effort. George Fang, we invited out to join us today and to meet with folks, is dedicated to managing, I'll call it import and export work between our China offices, among others, and our U.S. offices to make sure your needs are appropriately fulfilled. George is Shanghai-born but U.S. educated and currently residing in Los Angeles. George is up here at the table now standing. I'm dwarfed by that profile. It sounds so much more interesting than born at Newton Wellesley and living in Southborough. But there you go. That's why we invite people of depth of talent to join us and extend our capabilities to serve you. So thank you for coming again, and I'm sure that uses up my allocated time, so I'll get out of the way.
Thank you, Catherine. And next, I'm going to bring someone up who has two hats to wear here this morning. One hat as sort of one of our presenting sponsors for the graduate school. This is Joe Sarkis, the acting dean. And then his other hat is going to be sort of help facilitate the panel. So I'm going to give him a longer introduction then, but now I'm just going to bring him straight out. Joe?
Thank you, Peter. I brought my reading glasses, but I'll still have difficulty reading my prepared remarks anyway, so it doesn't matter either way for me. First of all, Clark University and the Graduate School of Management is honored to be partnering with BDO and the Worcester Business Journal to sponsor this event. We feel this type of forum is important and necessary community service from a number of perspectives, both from a business and an economic community development perspective. And Clark University likes to be involved and is always to be involved in our community activities. And this is an event that we enjoy as a with the Worcester Business Journal. A couple of other activities that we co-sponsor with the Worcester Business Journal include the Business Leaders Conference and or the awards, Business Leadership Awards, and the Family Business Awards. These are things that are part of our community and part of our philosophy within Clark University. We view this forum as a special event. It's a little bit different than the other event because it fits well within one of our strategic imperatives to build presence and install a broader global awareness in our faculty, in our students who are also represented here, in our staff, and now in our community by offering or co-sponsoring this event. We realize that China is one of the world's leading economies and expect it to be the leading economy in the future as well. At Clark University and in GSOM, we are doing our best to prepare our students to work in this changing global and economic environment. We are AACSB accredited, and that means that we're one of the top 5 universities in the world, business schools in the world, with this accreditation, and also in the top 20 to 30% of business schools in the United States. I'm not sure if you all knew that AACSB is a special type of quality accreditation. We have a number of programs at Clark University which we offer, and of course our major known program is the MBA program, the Masters in Business Administration. And within the Masters of Business Administration, we have a number of concentrations: finance, marketing, accounting, and management. We also have a concentration in international business, which is well attuned to what we're doing here today, because what we're looking at is an international business issue. China is, by necessity, a large part of that program and that instruction as well. We have one additional concentration, a non-traditional one, called social change. And we do this with international and community development as a core element of the social change program. And China and other nations developed and developing are part of the educational focus of this concentration as well. I'd like to make one announcement here, or one public announcement. This is the first time it's been made, and we're using this public outlet to do it. We just found out, and they allowed us to do it today, September 21st, and now it's at 8 o'clock in the morning, so officially it's September 21st. We just found out that we were ranked in the top 100 schools, business schools worldwide for leadership, sustainability, and ethics by the Aspen Institute Beyond Great Pinstripes survey. And this is, like I said, the first public announcement we've made that. this is a worldwide, 22 countries were represented in this survey, and again, this is something that we really like to say that we try to do a focus, a strategic direction that we're going for. Also, in terms of other programs, that was the MBA program. We have a Master's of Science in Finance. And within this program, a majority of our students are from overseas and from China specifically. We are preparing these students to understand and be able to function in a world economy. And as China continues to open its door economically and making some political strides as well in terms of liberty and other freedoms that they are trying to espouse. And we'll discuss some of those hopefully within the session that we have a little bit later. We also have a dual degree MBA MA program with our International Development, Community, and Environment program. And this is a unique program that attracts a lot of high quality students from throughout the United States, not just within the Worcester region, and internationally as well. And this is another announcement that hopefully we'll be able to make more official at a more recent or future event. We're also going to look to introduce, and I know there's a lot of accounting people out here as well, a Master's of Science in Accounting as a new program that we've been developing over the last 4 or 5 years. And we're going to finally put that in place this upcoming year, hopefully. And we're crossing our fingers that everything will work out. These programs are open to everyone here, the local community, as well as the international community, and Los Angeles too, George, if you want to come in from that, these programs. And if you're interested in this, we have a couple of our people, admissions and marketing people. Lynn Davis, Lynn, can you stand up? And Patrick Orozco. Patrick, can you stand up as well? These are our contact individuals if you're interested in any of these programs or being involved in them. Also, we look to you, our community, to be organizations and resources for our current students, either for internships or potentially as jobs as well. And we have MBA and MSF students from all over the world with the highest skills available based on our recruitment policies and our the entrance requirements. Skills that go beyond the necessary basics and fundamentals. As you can see, some of our students here, and you'll see a number of them here, have substantial insights about China and its management and its economics because they have lived there for most of their lives. So, and it's insights that they have that I could never build myself because I am not part of the Chinese community there. I did not grow up there. They have, and they understand both types of the cultural impacts as well as economic situations that they face there. Also, if you're interested in developing a relationship from an internship or a job placement, we have our Career Services Director, Lisa. Can you please stand up? There's Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa Radomski as well. She'll be around here as well a little bit later as well. So please, if you're interested in human capital knowledge that we have here, please be, you're more than welcome to contact us. So Clark University is a great beneficiary of doing business in China. We are also here to learn as well, and we look forward to a lively and interesting discussion and presentation by our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And now it's my pleasure to introduce someone who has actually been in government and been with the Patrick administration for several years, but just in the last month, I think it was 4 weeks ago, Ken, took on the duties of Executive Director of the Mass Office of International Trade and Investment. Now there's I don't want to crib too much, I'm reading from the notes that are in everyone's black folder on the table. You have a background on Ken and on all of the speakers who are on the panels. But he's been with the Patrick administration for some time and then had extensive experience also in Washington, D.C. as Special Assistant to Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown and his staff and Assistant to Senator Kennedy. So we're thrilled because Ken's been given the charge to sort of raise the profile of this office, of this state office, and we were talking before, and I think we're all here because we see the potential for Massachusetts companies that have products, services, intellectual property to increase their revenues and make our economy, more robust in a difficult time by really taking advantage of those exporting opportunities. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Ken Brown.
Good morning, thank you. I do have prepared remarks. I hope we have some time for Q&A, because that's really what I came to talk about, what we're doing specifically at Moiti, how we can help your businesses. But let me begin with my prepared remarks. Again, thank you and good morning. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to the Worcester Business Journal for having me this morning and sponsoring this timely and really important breakfast on doing business in China. And thanks to the event sponsors and the event planners. I've been on the other side of this microphone many times, and I understand all the hard work that goes into these events. And also thank you to the panelists. I've had an opportunity to work with Joel Schwartz from the MC. He's going to be a real treat this morning for you. I hope I get to work with all of you going forward. Joel and I worked most recently on the governor's trade mission to Israel. And again, the panelists are really going to be the meat and potatoes as to what it's like to do business on the ground in China. As Peter said, I'm the newly minted executive director of Moiti, so I really appreciate the opportunity to come here this morning. Before I talk about China, I want to tell you a little bit about Moiti and about my vision. And also, after the program, come up and say hello. I'm happy to sit down with you and see how we might be able to help your business, not only with respect to China, but certainly in all parts of the world. But I promise my focus this morning will be primarily on China, because there's much to talk about, many opportunities and many challenges. I want to highlight a couple of things that I think that fall within the universe of doing business in China from my vantage point as executive director, including the current state of U.S.-China relations. That'll only be a bit of my talk. Talk about foreign direct investments and trends there, export numbers, and some things that we are affirmatively doing at Moiti relating to foreign direct investment and export to create opportunities for your businesses. But as I said, before I begin, I want to tell you a little bit about Moiti. I'm going to skip the part about myself. I wanted to take a brief moment to tell you what my priorities are. Like other state agencies charged with economic development, Moiti should really be about creating jobs and also retaining jobs. I had the opportunity to speak to AIM yesterday. I know Kristen's in the back here. And we all agree that all of these economic development agencies across the state should be about one thing, and that's creating jobs. And this economy should also be about retaining jobs. So we're working on that. On the FDI side of the ledger, we at Moiti work to facilitate investment opportunities by and between Massachusetts companies and foreign investors. I also see Art from MOBD here, so welcome Art, other partners in state government. I take the view at Moiti, and I know my friends at MOBD do as well, and the Mass Export Center and others, that we need to be more active on export promotion and on the FDI side of the ledger, not only with China, but with other markets as well, other emerging markets. And Joel and I were having a bit of a conversation about this. Emerging markets, I think, are broken down not only by country, but also by size. So we're here to talk about China, but our Moiti mission is also to facilitate opportunities for you in those other markets, Brazil, Korea, India, for instance. When it comes to foreign direct investment, with globalization really taking hold in nearly every sector of our economy here in Massachusetts, and certainly our innovation economy, it's not enough to sit back and have it come to us. We need to affirmatively be out there to promote FDI in Massachusetts. And some of the things that we do and that we need to do, we need to attend trade shows to promote Massachusetts as a destination for foreign investment. A couple of really big trade shows coming to Massachusetts that are international in scope. One is Bio 2012. That's about life sciences, but it should also be about creating opportunities for FDI in Massachusetts. We also have AdvaMed, which is the large international medical device show coming to Boston. First time ever outside of Washington, D.C. That's coming in October of 2012. Again, it's about medical devices. It's about some of the component parts, but it's also about creating opportunities for FDI. So I intend, as a new director, to really use these trade shows and other vehicles as an avenue for investment for Massachusetts. We also need to send senior government officials abroad to pitch Massachusetts as a destination for sovereign wealth funds. including the Chinese Investment Corp, or what we know as CIC. We need to partner with private industry to fund in-country trade representatives. We just did that in Israel. We do have a trade rep, by the way, in China, but we're looking for funding, so if there's any sponsors that want to help out with that. We have a vehicle in state government called the Moving Massachusetts Forward Fund, where we are trying to partner with private industry to help the state fund some of these initiatives that really benefit you. That's what we're about, benefiting business. When it comes to export promotion, I think we do a tremendous job. I think the Export Center does a tremendous job. But I think we need to coordinate with private industry and their trade associations a little bit more to surface new access points and opportunities, especially in places like China. We also need to monitor, and this really applies to China. There's many of the export opportunities. I think you can get ahead of the curve on some of these if you understand what their economic policies are, what their emerging policies are. So we need to monitor economic policies of the emerging markets that might give rise to new export opportunities, especially, as I said, in China. For instance, I was looking at some of the FDI, and China has essentially just opened up their airways, their airlines, and because of that, there's a whole bunch of FDI opportunities with respect to aviation, advanced aviation parts, composites, materials, and whatnot. We also need to market more aggressively a user-friendly portal or website for export promotion. Again, the Export Center does a tremendous job, but I think we need to be better coordinated at the state level. All this is going to make sense in a bit as we get into China. And this is relevant to China. This is relevant to the governor's charge. It's relevant to the way I view my role at Mori. I firmly believe that despite some of the press accounts, we have the ability to shape our participation and certainly our pace in the globalization of our economy here in Massachusetts. And I don't want to sound too much bravado here, but shape it we must, because the rest of the world is not necessarily catching up, but they're not standing still. And as a state and as a region, we need to invest in our relationships. One of the reasons that the governor asked me to take over more is because I have relationships. I hope they're all good, but perhaps they're not. But I have relationships across state government, across private industry. And my role really is to coordinate those relationships within government. Believe it or not, we have a lot of coordination that we need to do with the state government. We work well with our partners at MODD and the National Export Center, but we need to work better with other partners. We need to coordinate our relationships with private industry trade associations. That's why I went to AIM yesterday. We want to begin some of these relationships anew. We're in a second term. The economy is changing. We want to develop relationships with our great colleges and universities, including Clark, and as we have done with Clark. And indeed, one of the things we want to do, and I think I see some students here, we want to really create and coordinate relationships with our international students because, and again, I don't want to sound so arrogant, but I've been all over the world and with Secretary Brown, with President Clinton, with Governor Patrick, and the number one most enthusiastic audience that you see are students. And all of these international students, I'm going to get to this in a bit, but all these international students that we have that come through our doorway, our gateway of Massachusetts, become the future business leaders. They become the future government leaders. And some of them are at the highest levels of government, but as I've come to really appreciate, it's the mid-level bureaucracy. I won't call them bureaucrats, but there's a bureaucracy. They make the trains run on time. They come to Massachusetts to be educated. We need to capture that good feeling in some way. And I'll talk about that a bit. We need to not only talk about working together, but we really do need to work together. So I hope today, this is my introduction to the Worcester Business Journal audience, and also I'm very familiar with Metro West and Central Mass, but again, this is sort of my coming out party, if you will. I hope that some of these comments will give you a sense, give you a context, if you will, as to today's discussion about China. Today's discussion about China could not be more timely as the global economy and China's reach in it and stake in it. And indeed, China's reach into some of our very own innovation sectors here in Massachusetts continues to make news. We had an American superconductor story in the Globe not too long ago. And I'm not sure what press it was in, but I did read and was aware of Boston Power announcement. So it's in the news. It continues to make news. And what really it's affirmed for all of us is that the current and future economic and political importance of a strong U.S.-China relationship, a strong and vibrant relationship that matters to Massachusetts and certainly to our region. While, again, it's not my role to discuss the current state of political affairs, although I do love politics. It's a hobby, not that I have any spare time anymore, but I've been following just from the sidelines, and also as Molinaro director, the U.S.-China relationship, obviously. Again, while it's not my role to discuss the current state of political affairs between the United States and China, but as we discuss doing business in China, and George and others can attest, it's very important what the U.S.-China relationship is to doing business in China. It's really important to note the recent public statements by both the Chinese government and the United States that really recognize that economic coordination and collaboration by and between China and the U.S. is really a necessity. It's a necessity in today's shifting global economy. I was on a panel, I think probably a week or so ago at the Kennedy School. Every once in a while, I think I had these brilliant questions. And I asked one of the panelists, I said, has the economic crisis really ultimately strengthened the U.S.-China relationship, and perhaps they will pay more attention to some of the challenges that we have, perhaps listen to some of our concerns a bit more. And he agreed that that was the case. So with this crisis, this global economic drawn the U.S. and China together, we need each other. And I dare say that we are in this together, and they recognize that. I tried to do a bit of reading in many papers, and it was hard not to miss, it was hard to miss, I should say, Vice President Biden's op-ed in the New York Times, which he wrote about a week or so ago, and he said this: "We often focus on Chinese exports to America, but last year American companies exported more than $100 billion worth of goods and services to China, supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs here. A successful China can make us more prosperous, not less. As trade and investment bind us together, we have a stake in each other's success." While there remain ongoing and real challenges in the U.S.-China relationship, and indeed for businesses on the ground in China, many challenges, I'm sure you're going to hear from our panelists on those. The Vice President's comments are really instructive to us here as we further develop our economic relationship and also our public sentiment, if you will, with China and Chinese enterprises here in the Commonwealth. In order to get a real-time assessment of the current state of the Massachusetts-China relationship, I reached out to all of you, not really all of you, but figuratively all of you. I reached out to the colleges and universities. I reached out to businesses. I talked to some of my colleagues in government. I spoke to Alan Guo from the China Institute at UMass. I spoke to Tony Sage, who I traveled to China with. He's at the Kennedy School. And now we'll talk to Clark University. They talked and I listened. I like to do a lot of listening, which is why I hope we have some Q&A. And based on those conversations and so many others like it, what we are hearing and seeing in the Commonwealth, with few exceptions, but there are exceptions, is not the footsteps of an approaching China, but rather a call for Chinese partnerships, collaborations, and investments in our innovation economy, and the further opening of a vast marketplace for goods and services from Massachusetts. So I begin our discussion with those sentiments, that we are a collaborator in our economies. Indeed, we recognize and embrace the significant economic appeal to China. We're complemented by this. for foreign direct investment here in the Commonwealth as presented by a growing and vibrant innovation economy, all sectors, clean tech, IT, life sciences, while at the same time requiring or understanding the need to actively build relationships of mutual respect with China in order to better access their marketplace and markets for export of our goods. And we're ever mindful, and this is important, of the delicate balance between collaboration and competition. Because in many countries, there is certainly an overall spirit of collaboration, but make no mistake, as much as we're in this together, we are also competing for certain of the same markets. I want to briefly run through some numbers on trade and investment. I'm not really a numbers guy, but I think they really are telling. We'll talk about FDI, and I'll talk about some of our export numbers. And if I have any of them wrong, let me correct them for the press, but also point them out. This is an inexact science. There are so many numbers out there on China. It's hard to drill down. In fact, one newspaper was calling our governor's press shop to get a definitive number of businesses that do business, Massachusetts businesses that do business in China. That's almost an impossible task. We don't know all the businesses. We don't know all of you that are doing business in China, but I can tell you that it's many. One of the most significant developments in the U.S.-China economic relationship is China's increased activity on the foreign direct investment side of the ledger. It's fascinating. While the data with respect to FDI by China in the United States is, in my words, at once incomplete and difficult to track, what we do know is that as of 2010, businesses from China have established operations and created jobs in at least 35 states, and I imagine that's probably increased, and across dozens of sectors, including right here in Massachusetts. And that FDI in the United States is doubling with over $5 billion in foreign direct investment in 2010 alone. There are other numbers. There are other affiliates of Chinese companies that are doing business here which are not included in that number. We also know that there is this is sort of a trend issue that we're here to talk about. We also know there's a fairly pronounced active transition by the Chinese from investments in raw materials abroad to investments in business ventures around the world by way of mergers, acquisitions, and greenfield investments. And I'm going to keep pointing out Joel because we know each other. He's going to speak a bit about some of those trends. Unlike the recent past where FDI flowed predominantly from the developed world to the developing world, the United States is now, and this is a good thing, on the receiving end of significant and growing FDI from China. This is by no means to suggest that FDI from China to the U.S. is eclipsing or even approaching in a small way the current direct investment by United States companies in China. That's something to think about as we discuss this relationship. We are doing business. U.S. companies are doing business at a very grand scale in China. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, China's FDI stock in the U.S. grew from $1.2 billion in 2008, and as I said earlier, to $5.9 in 2010 alone. The latest FDI numbers were reported yesterday. For those wondering where I spent my afternoon, I was looking at a series of reports on FDI numbers, and again, it's hard to kind of find one depository of those. But the latest FDI numbers related to the second quarter of 2011 continue to support the trend of exponential growth. And I underline exponential. Exponential growth of FDI by the Chinese, where Chinese investors spent $2.6 billion on 13 greenfield projects. Those are new projects. And 5 acquisitions in the United States, boasting the total of FDI expenses in the U.S. in the first 6 months of 2011 to $3.27 billion. Split between, this is again an interesting point, split between $573 million for greenfield projects and $2.7 billion for 11 acquisitions. So the trend is more towards acquisitions, obviously, and not towards clean investments. And again, I tried to, again, this is not scientific, so bear with me. I tried to determine what the range, who the Chinese investors are, because that's not always an easy thing. Not that I read The Economist regularly, but in the last, gosh, I don't know, maybe not this past issue, but the issue before, there's a nice article about who in China is doing business abroad. It talks about the various enterprises, and if you have a chance, Google that. It's on The Economist the last 3 weeks or so. And it really, as we do our due diligence at Moody, sometimes it's more difficult than you suspect. Who are you really dealing with? Is it a state enterprise? Is it a private enterprise? Is it a hybrid? Who is it? So the range of Chinese investors in the United States is broad, and I can say one size does not fit all. Indeed, the universe of investors includes, no surprise here, China's Sovereign Wealth Fund, or the CIC, state-owned enterprises, hybrid firms, as I said, with a combination of private investors married up with a state-owned enterprise, and wholly private firms and investors. According to one recent study on FDI, private firm share of investment, again an interesting point, private firm share of investment in the United States is higher than for China globally. In other words, private investors holding on to their wealth are coming to the United States and investing in a variety of things. We'll talk about that in a bit. Well, I cannot say, and I wouldn't even if I could, with any authority, that the investments fall predominantly within one sector or another. Investments for the second quarter of 2011, as I said earlier, include advanced aviation components. This is just for the last quarter. Advanced aviation components and materials, telecommunications firms, communication-related equipments, and of course, consumer electronics. Again, this is where I rely on you. This is where I rely on our ecosystem. In an effort to determine the existence of any overall trends of investment, I did a bit of anecdotal research, which I do a lot of, and I spoke to Lin Yang from the Kennedy School. I met Lin at this is why we do these things. I met Lin at a event sponsored by the British Consulate. She came up to me and said, I'm doing a case study on Chinese investments in the U.S. She dedicated to just that. So of course I took a business card, and then yesterday I was having problems with all of this, trying to make sense of it. I called her up. She's reviewing 20 investments from Chinese enterprises, both mixed state enterprises and private firms. She told me that private investors are focusing, again, this is not much of a surprise, but this will confirm what we already know. They're really focusing on real estate investments. And on the private side, and I suppose we could all go out and do some research and perhaps figure out some trends here. On the private side, private investors are investing in businesses or things that complement their businesses in China. For example, and I'm new to this, so I found this fascinating. For example, one private investor involved in textile manufacturing, clothing, is looking to purchase a brand here in the Massachusetts area, brand for clothing. I'm going to tap into this network of folks from Clark, from Harvard, from UMass. It's one of the things I'll talk about at the end. While there really doesn't appear to be any trend, where there does appear to be an intersection of investments of private investors and state-owned enterprises is really in our innovation economy, including clean energy, which has been in the news quite a bit, biotech, life sciences, and the supporting infrastructure of research and development, and looking at our students, I think for students, education. In fact, we have real-time examples right here in Massachusetts, and I think I'm going to point in the right direction. Down the road in Marlborough, which is a Chinese-owned English, and I'm going to, this is my own words, English immersion campus at the former Verizon call center, where students from China engage in a preparatory program prior to entry into our U.S. university system. Not just UMass, we hope it's Clark, we hope it's Harvard, we hope it's a variety of public and private colleges. This is but one example of foreign direct investment that is working here in Massachusetts. There's an economic growth factor which comes out of that campus. I won't get into that, but one of the points that both Alan made, and I know our friends from Clark can make, and others, is that when Chinese companies come here, they're localizing their operations. Again, this is a good thing. And when we go to China, and I think our panelists will confirm this, we localize our operations in China. It's good business, and it makes sense. According to a recent report by the Asia Society and the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States, if China follows the pattern of other emerging nations, which has been the trend throughout China's economic development, more than $1 trillion in direct Chinese investment will flow worldwide by 2010. That's only 8 years. A significant share of which will likely end up in advanced markets such as the United States. What does all this mean for Massachusetts? I wish I could sit down with each one of you and tell you what it means individually for your business, but in its simplest terms, we believe, going back to what I said earlier, this is an opportunity for economic growth here in Massachusetts. Given our innovation economy and our skilled and educated workforce and our colleges and universities, Massachusetts is well positioned to affirmatively market investments and collaboration in Massachusetts. We talked a little bit about export promotion. And on the Q&A, if we have time, if I don't go too long, I'm happy to talk about specific FDI opportunities. Like China's deliberate and measured, and these are my words, measured transition relating to the nature and extent of FDI in the U.S., the Chinese government's growth model calls for greater stimulation of domestic consumer consumption, resulting in what I hope and what we all hope will be more export opportunities for Massachusetts goods and services. Currently, our export relationship with China is growing, but we need to grow it more. Let me just take a quick look at the numbers. And these are again, I'm not a numbers person, but they are fascinating just by how large they are. U.S. exports to China between 2000 and 2010 rose from $16.2 billion in 2000 to $91.9 billion during that 10-year period, up 468%. Here's a staggering number. Total U.S. exports to the rest of the world increased by 55%. Of the top U.S. markets, in export markets in 2010, China ranks third. We can sort of play with that number a little bit if we include Hong Kong, but in any event, it still ranks third behind Canada and Mexico. From 2009, more up-to-date, more relevant numbers for us. From 2009 to 2010, growth in U.S. exports to China increased by 32.2% compared to, if you compare our other major trading partners, 21.3% in Canada and 26.7% in Mexico. Keep in mind we have a free trade agreement with those companies. How does Massachusetts and our region rate in terms of exports to China? Of the top 15 U.S. exporters to China, Massachusetts ranked 12th with $2.2 billion in exports, with a growth rate of 337% over the period 2000 to 2010. Exports to the rest of the world from Massachusetts over the same period grew by 20%. No other, telling fact here, no other New England state made the top 15. Just to take a step back, this was not in my remarks, but someone sent me an email late night on this. With respect to FDI, and I'm not certain that this is entirely correct, we do not, Massachusetts does not rank in the top 20. But I can tell you in the last quarter, a Chinese state-owned enterprise bought essentially an energy company which owns power plants throughout the world, which was Massachusetts-based, so we were right up there at the top of the list for the last quarter. But generally, we have not been in the top 20. But in exports, we're in the top 15. No other state in our region. I don't include New York in the New England region, by the way. For the period 2009 to 2010, the growth rate, as I said, for exports to China was 60%, the largest growth of any international market for Massachusetts. China is Massachusetts' third largest export market behind Canada and the UK. The moral of this economic snapshot is that while Massachusetts is exporting goods to China, there is significant room to grow that number, and we believe that as China trends towards greater domestic consumption, the markets and goods and services from Massachusetts will expand. Like FDI, here again, the economic development story is that we must take affirmative steps to grow our share of the pie, to put it quite bluntly. We need to affirmatively participate in expanding Chinese export markets and marketplaces for our business. And I'm proud to say that we do participate in this call for more action on export and FDI. There's rarely a day that goes by where Moidi, and certainly where I am not contacted by a Chinese government official or a Chinese company or a venture that wants to discuss in some fashion, some legit, some not so legit, investing in Massachusetts. We're inviting you all, Massachusetts companies, to one of numerous trade shows. I think I was telling Peter that every day, and this is not an exaggeration, every single day I get at least one call relating to China, which is not precipitated or made by a Massachusetts business. It's either a government official or a private investor or a law firm representing a private investor. I've been at Moidi for a little over a month, and just in the last 2 weeks, every day I've had a call. So we have what the Chinese want, and that is a good thing. As I said, we are participating in this marketing effort. For example, over a period of 5 business days, these are just some of the things I did last week. I toured a Chinese FDI project in Marlborough. I met with senior officials from the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Council to discuss, very interested in water management and related business opportunities in Massachusetts. They want to invest in some of our water management technologies. I met with a senior official from the General Office of the National Development and Reform Commission and his investors to discuss possible investments in a large industrial park in Massachusetts. What I want to do, what we can be better at doing that, is to spread that proverbial wealth. When folks want to invest in an industrial park, it doesn't mean necessarily right outside of Boston. It doesn't mean in Worcester. It doesn't mean in Fall River. We need to, this is where we bring in NOVD and other partners in state government. We try to market the entire state. The investments are coming. These are real opportunities. These are meetings that I had. I also did a phone call with representatives of a Chinese clean energy company who really mimic a technology which we're very proud of here in Massachusetts. They intend to open up a sales and distribution center here in Massachusetts. And also they talked a little bit about manufacturing. These are some real opportunities. These are the real examples of what we are hearing and seeing in Massachusetts. While we are often approached by China and their businesses, I want to briefly touch upon a few strategies that we are engaged in with respect to furthering our economic relationship. We recognize that the foundation of much of the dealings with the Chinese, whether it's with government or business enterprises, is the strength of the personal relationship. That the nature and the strength of that relationship is so important to the Chinese, in many ways more important than the deal itself. In an effort to build new relationships and strengthen existing ones with our Chinese counterparts in government, academia, and business, I believe we need to do the following in short order. And we will get you all engaged in this. This is much of what I said to Anne yesterday. We need to establish one portal in state government and on the web for international trade in Massachusetts. I'm proud of all the work that we've done, all the work that the Patrick Murray administration has done in economic development. We need to do more to create a one-stop shop on international trade. We need to establish, and again, this is where you come in, a formal public-private partnership on international trade between state government, private industry, their trade associations, and academia, with an advisory council dedicated to marketing and promoting Massachusetts international trade, with working groups dedicated exclusively to certain countries, most notably China. I was in the governor's office when we formed the Council of Economic Advisors. We need to form a similar council on international trade. In short, we need to establish the Governor's International Trade and Investment Council comprised of leaders from the business world and academia. We need to establish a formal trade council, which is dedicated exclusively to addressing policy matters that impact trade and investment generally, and Massachusetts companies specifically, and certainly a working group on issues relating to China. I'm going to wrap up here. Lastly, we need to engage the international student population and alumni for purposes of developing international business abroad, export opportunities, and FDI investments here. We need to launch a global alumni initiative by countries, starting with China, moving on to Brazil and India. We're going to engage Clark, we're going to engage UMass, we're going to engage MIT. These are just a few examples, and my time is running out. What we're doing at Moody to engage export promotion and FDI more firmly. And I'll close by saying, as is the case with all of our international economic relationships, whether it be with Israel or Ireland, the UK, or Ukraine, we continue the long-established economic relationship between China and Massachusetts with our eyes wide open, mindful of the delicate balance between collaboration and competition, but convinced that Massachusetts' standing in the global economy did not happen by accident or by standing still. Thank you, and thanks for having me this morning.
As Ken mentioned, he's going to try and stick around for part of this panel, and I want to, just before he takes off, I want to give him one of the beautiful Worcester City on the Move books on Central Mass. We hope to spend some more time as part of this day. Thank you very much. All right. Fantastic. Okay, we're going to jump right into our panel conversation. As I mentioned, there are write-ups in the booklet on the panelists, but there isn't one on Joe Sarkis, who's the interim dean at Clark University. We heard from Joe earlier. He not only teaches, but he conducts research in operations and supply chain management, green business, and technology management. One of his current research areas is the investigation of environmental, meaning green, and other supply chain practices within China. He's worked with a number of companies worldwide in helping understand how to improve their operations, and has served as a C-Sky Scholar for a number of years at Dalian University of Technology in Dalian, China. So the bottom line is Joe is he's eminently prepared to help us get some valuable insights from this terrific panel we have with us this morning. Without further ado, our moderator for the panel conversation, Dean Joseph Sarkis.
Why don't I invite all the panelists to come up right now, please? And the structure of our panel discussion, as the panelists come up, what I'll do is introduce each of the panelists with a brief background. The biographies are in your folders as well. I'll read over some of those high points that I found on them. And that'll take about 5 or 10 minutes, we hope, relatively quickly. Then I've asked each panelist to prepare about a 5-minute presentation discussing their current situation, what type of business they're doing in China, the relationships they have. They were given a set of questions that we would try to guide them by. And then after that 5-minute introduction by each of the panelists, we will go back and discuss a little bit of historical perspective. Essentially, how did they get to where they are right now? And then that'll be about a 10 to 20 minute discussion. And then we'll have additional questions about future directions and expectations of doing business in China. And that'll be the remainder of the time for the panelists. And we really do hope to have questions in a interactive session at the very end from the audience. And maybe we'll leave a little bit more time on that and a little less time discussing all of the different war stories that we've asked the panelists to do as well. But we'll have an open floor at the end with some questions. So let me first introduce all the way from my right towards my far right towards my near right over here. Well, first, George Zang at the very beginning here. And he's an audit partner and the head of the China desk at BDO. Prior to joining BDO, George was an associate professor of accounting at Shanghai University of Finance and Economics and actively involved in China's economic and accounting reform program. George received 6 academic awards for outstanding contribution. He has published over 40 papers on academic journals and authored a textbook, Accounting for Joint Ventures with Foreign Investment. George has worked as a consultant with many international business organizations and Chinese government agencies. He's also engaged as a consultant for 3 previously state-owned companies whose shares are currently listed on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. George heads the firm-wide China desk, as we stated. He coordinates inbound and outbound business opportunities and facilitates various practical issues among BDO International Limited member partners throughout Southeast Asia. He is deeply involved in the international business and cross-border financing deals of businesses and companies from Southeast region, Asia region, and the United States. He's a member of a number of professional affiliations. And his U.S. education, at least, I realized that he also has some Chinese education as well, includes an MBA in finance from the University of Illinois Chicago and an MS in accounting from the University of Illinois Chicago. And if he does want to get an MS in finance, he can get it from Clark University. Thank you, George, for being here today. The next panelist is Gabriel Royo, and Gabriel is Vice President of Metals Technology Services Rolling Mills for Siemens Industry Incorporated. He has the Metallurgical Services Rolling Global Business Unit responsible for worldwide services for long and flat rolling mills. He heads a global team with multiple locations in the USA, France, Germany, UK, Austria, China, India, Brazil, and Russia. Prior to Siemens, he was Senior Vice President of Worldwide Services for Morgan Construction Company right here in Worcester, Massachusetts. He worked for Intel Corporation as an Installation and Qualification Director. He also worked at Vico, a semiconductor capital equipment company, as Senior Vice President of Worldwide Services. He has extensive experience in managing services and global organizations for capital equipment. He holds a Master of Science in Industrial and Management Systems Engineering from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering. And I notice he doesn't have a business degree, and George knows Gabriel knows where to get one of those. Thank you. Gabriel, for being here as well. Our next panelist is, and Joel is probably well known in this community here as well, is Joel Schwartz. Mr. Schwartz is responsible for the overall strategy. Joel Schwartz is Senior Vice President and General Manager of Global New Business Development at EMC Corporation. And he's traveling the world. We were lucky to have him here, by the way, today. I think he's flying back to China sometime this upcoming week. And this is a break in his travel trips. Mr. Schwartz is responsible for the overall strategic direction of EMC's new business activities around the world. He has also included in his responsibilities as EMC's Consumer Small Business Products Division, EMC's OEM Business Unit. In his global role, he initiated EMC's development activities in Brazil, Russia, India, China, Singapore, the BRICS countries, of course, and Mexico. Mr. Schwartz joined EMC in 1999 from Dato General Corporation, where he served as the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Clarion Division, as well as Vice President of Worldwide Sales and Marketing. At EMC, Mr. Schwartz's annual sales for the Clarion Division grew from $500 million to $2 billion in 5 years. Mr. Schwartz was also Senior EMC Executive responsible for the Dell-EMC relationship. Prior to joining Data General, Schwartz was President of Polygon Corporation, also held various General Manager and Marketing Sales Management positions at Digital Workman Corporation. So he's went through almost every type of computer and high technology company, I think, in this area, this is up in the Metro West area. Schwartz is a member of the Board of Directors of Life Image at an early stage Boston-based company designing solutions for sharing patients' medical and imaging information. He's also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Finca Vigia Foundation, a nonprofit organization working to preserve Ernest Hemingway's legacy in Cuba. The old man in the sea out there. Okay, and Schwartz holds a BS in Electrical Engineering and MS in Electrical Engineering from Case Western Reserve University, and also attended the Executive Management Program at Stanford University. Of course, he can always come back for an MBA at Clark University. And our next and final panelist here, our fourth panelist, is Jim Molinaro. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Tech Precision Corporation. Tech Precision Corporation, headquartered in Center Valley, Pennsylvania, is the holding company for Ranor Incorporated, located in Westminster, Massachusetts, and Wuxi Critical Mechanical Components Company Limited. Wuxi, is that the Wuxi. Tech Precision and its subsidiaries provide manufacturing, engineering, machining, fabrication, production, and tests for large-scale equipment in nuclear defense, alternative energy, medical, and commercial industrial products sectors. Prior to joining Tech Precision, Mr. Molinaro served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Acreon Systems, a manufacturer of capital equipment with applications in the semiconductor, defense, solar cell industries from May 2003 to March 2009. Between October 1999 and April 2003, Mr. Molinaro was Vice President of Sales, Service, and Marketing at Acreon Systems. Prior to joining Acreon Systems, Mr. Molinaro was Vice President of Engineering and Vice President of Sales and Marketing of Submicron Systems. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering with a concentration in robotics from the Pennsylvania State University and participated in executive development course at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And again, where's the MBA here? Okay, well, thank you all, gentlemen, for being here today, and thank everybody in the audience for being here to be participating in our panel discussion as well. And going down far right to the center, 5 minutes about your experiences in doing business in China and your current situation there as well. George, would you like to start us out?
Okay, thank you. I'm an audit partner from BDO Seaman. I have been working in BDO for more than 17 years. I came from Shanghai, China, 22 years ago as a visiting scholar to the United States. My current and main activity concentrated on consulting, auditing of public companies who are doing business in China, include many different industries, cover the area in almost 30 provinces in the entire China. My hometown is Shanghai, which is a business center over there. There are more than 200,000 Caucasians living in Shanghai, more than 50 Japanese people, and more than 40 Korean people living in Shanghai. There are tons of opportunity over there. I met with many American people who told me their experience in Shanghai is back to the early 1990s, wild west in China. So that's my experience. I consulted with partner doing a variety of business in different industries, such as automobiles, telecommunications, data transport for farmers in a very sophisticated industry. We have performed the audit. We encounter numerous issues, questions, understandings. Luckily, I'm one of the parts of the audit team. Use my background and native Chinese language and my education in the United States to help our client to solve a lot of issues based on not accounting auditing side, more or less on the business side, the culture side, and the understanding side. Try to bridge the gap between the Pacific Ocean, if I wish and if I could. Thank you. I'm only one person. I want more people join with me as a team to bridge the gap between the Pacific Ocean, enhance the U.S. economy, and then the other side, expand the China business to United States. This is all our goal. Let's work together.
Good morning. So I'm part of Siemens industry, within industry metals technology. Our experience, for those of you that are familiar with the Worcester area business, our company was called Morgan Construction Company. It was a company born in Worcester since 1888, and in 2008, Siemens AG of Germany, they purchased 100% our company. So when I'm going to talk about our experience in China, it will be the experience of the Metals Technology Group, which I represent, that we're based in Worcester, Massachusetts. Of course, Siemens being a huge global company has a lot bigger operations in China than what I would describe. In our history, basically, we started business in China in the 1980s. We have gone through many transitions. We have formed licensees that have come and gone in particular products. In the early 90s, we have an agency agreement. The first contract we had in China was probably 1982. So we have been active in China for many, many years. In the early 90s, we formed our own company in Shanghai, and we grew and we put a lot of money in that investment. Just to briefly touch what our products is, our customers, our metals customers, 90% of them are steel companies around the world. The steel production in China is the #1 steel producer in the world right now. Just for you to have a comparison, the USA has installed capacity of 100 million tons a year. China has 500 million tons a year installed capacity. So China has 5 times this installed capacity of the US. So for us, of course, China from the beginning was an attractive market to be in. So we have gone, again, we have done licensees agreements, we have had our own agency, then we migrated to have our own company. Of course, we have bigger operations as part of Siemens now, and we still have a joint venture company in Guangzhou in China. So today, the metals, we have 2 companies in the Shanghai area, Minhan and in Taichan, and 1 company in Guangzhou that is a 50% partner. I think as an introduction, I'll stop there.
Okay. Maybe just a question. You mentioned licensing agreement, agency agreement, and joint venture and ownership. Those are the 4 different types of investment. Is that correct?
Yes, but right now we don't have any license agreement. We don't have any agency agreements anymore. I mean, we have gone through all those experiences, let's put it this way.
Okay.
Today we have own operations, and we still have a joint venture partner.
The reason why you went through this, was this for more control as you went through these processes? Does your company control more of the operations there when you go from a licensing all the way to joint venture or ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. The license basically again is I think is something that we are evolving out of in most of the world. And you can license your technology, you get a royalty that they produce there. The downside and our bad experience in China is that today probably the one that was our licensee is the toughest competitor we have today globally. So basically we set them up in business as a global company. Those are some of the mistakes I think we have made.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. Joel?
I'm Joel Schwartz. I work for EMC Corporation. We're sort of on the edge of Worcester, actually based in Hopkinton. EMC today is about a $20 billion company. We're all in the IT sector, primarily provide infrastructure for the IT sector, with a big emphasis on storage. The core business of the company, of the $20 billion, more than $15 billion comes from information storage. So I'd like to quickly take you back to 2001, 2002. I was the general manager of product division at the time. At that time, EMC only had 2 product divisions, and we were much smaller. The company was $6 or $7 billion in size. We were $500 million, and our products were much less expensive than the other storage division. And we realized that in order to grow our business, we were going to have to focus more on the international markets. And in particular, since our products were low cost, we felt that the third countries represented the biggest opportunity. At that time, EMC did about 60% of its business in the United States, about 40% out. We had very little knowledge or experience in doing business in any of these emerging large economies. Anyway, we decided we were going to go out and create and start to do business there. And of course, the BRICS, by the way, is Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Since we didn't know anything, what we decided to do was contact some friends at Clark University who we heard could help us in terms of understanding business practices, the business culture, et cetera, so that we wouldn't make fools of ourselves as we got started in this activity.
It was Tom Massey, if I remember.
Tom Massey and Max Hess, and Gail Holland, who's here. Gail was HR director for our division. Gail was a graduate of Clark. She knew them, and through a strange coincidence, if you see my alma mater's Case Western Reserve, John Bassett, who at that time was the president, formerly was the head of arts and sciences at Case Western. So there's all these little weird kind of networking contacts. Good reason to do networking, by the way, for the students in the audience. Anyway, we got together and talked about developing a course for our employees. And when I say employees, our employees, I mean all our employees, whether it was me, the head of the division, or the people down in the organization, because we knew we were going to start to be working there. Now we had sales offices in these countries, but it was clear that if we were going to grow our business, we were going to have to do more than just have sales offices. These countries all wanted us to invest in some fashion, and invest to them either meant build a manufacturing facility, and we had more than enough manufacturing capacity at that time, or start to do research and development there. And at that time, all of our EMC's R&D was in the United States. Most of it in Hopkinton, right down the road. Just to fast forward to today, 40% of our R&D is done outside of the United States. And I had the opportunity to start each one of those efforts, and that's where some of the initial learning and thoughts and ideas that came from Tom and Max at Clark really helped us in terms of understanding how to deal with people, what they really meant, and a lot of other things that you wouldn't think about if you were just going to go over there and show up. So a tremendous amount of indebtedness with Clark University in helping us get started in that effort. So a little bit fast forward to today. Today, EMC does about $400 million of business in China. We're growing that business about 30–35% a year. We've been in China about 15 years. Most of our growth has really been in the last 5 years. We have about 1,500 employees in China. About 1,000 of them are in R&D. We're in either Shanghai, Beijing. We're about to open up a new facility in Chengdu. The rest are in sales and service. Most of our customers are somehow related to the government, either directly the government or what they call state-owned enterprises like the telecoms and other large operations there. Some of the things we've learned in doing business in China, and I'll just mention a couple now. If you have questions later, I'll be happy to answer them. First of all, I'm not very good at foreign languages, and so when I get kind of started in dealing with some of these countries, I was really concerned, am I going to be able to sit there and understand what's going on, and et cetera, because it was clear I wasn't going to be able to learn Chinese. And what I found out, and someone actually gave me a really good hint here, it really is not that important unless you're going to live it. And when I say it's not that important, if you're interested in doing it personally, that's great, do it. But if your primary interest is business, there's enough people there that either speak English or there'll be people in the room with you who can help translate. And to try and work your way through it, and this particular individual was the CEO of a company told me he worked on it for 3 years. And could only sort of conduct and understand about a third of what was going on. And all the meetings dragged out twice as long because everybody was sort of trying to help them get along and understand exactly what we said, whereas if they did it in English right from the get-go, everything would have happened much faster. So again, I'm not, particularly students here, I'm not suggesting you don't take Chinese. What I'm saying is though, for business, unless you're going to live there, it's certainly not a requirement. A second comment I'll make about doing business in China is that you can't do it sitting in your office back here in the United States and having people who work for you come and tell you what it's all about. If you're going to make things happen, you have to be in the country. I travel 200,000 miles a year. I'm a top flyer in the MC. And I do it because I like it, and I do it because it's really part of, I can't do my job without, by sitting in the office and having people come and tell me what's going on. When you're there, to me, the most important thing is establishing the relationships with the people. And particularly in China, you can spend months developing contracts. And there's the lawyers on both sides, back and forth, everything. Right? In the end, right, if you think that you're going to be able to enforce everything that's in that contract, if your partner chooses not to follow it, you're kidding yourself. And if you think you're going to be able to somehow sue them or not following what's in there, again, you're kidding yourself. So therefore, the agreements you make, whether they're joint ventures, OEM agreements, or any other type of business arrangements, you need to trust the people that you're dealing with. And if you don't feel that you trust them, don't depend on the contract to save you. Find someone else. Anyway, I have an opportunity later to answer any other questions. I want some practical thoughts in doing business there.
Thank you very much. Jim?
Good morning. Joel, just comment, I did receive my Rosetta Stone for Mandarin on Monday, and only up to section 6. And now that we're also doing a lot of business in Hong Kong, somebody informed me, don't forget Mandarin, it's Cantonese, so now I'm really in trouble. I'm Jim Molinaro, CEO of Tech Precision Corporation. We own the Raynor operation in Westminster, Massachusetts. Raynor has been in the large-scale precision manufacturing, machining, fabrication for 56 years in Westminster. Primary markets are in the clean tech, primarily solar, wind turbine. We also produce little things like the Westinghouse AP1000 nuclear reactor components and Virginia-class submarines. I previously set up operations in China when I took the helm of Tech Precision. We were informed by our two largest customers, which is GT Advanced Technologies and Westinghouse, that they're going to partner with companies that are going to move manufacturing to China because their exports can go to zero. At the time, Raynor was exporting about $15 million a year to China, and next year it's going to be zero because we are manufacturing in China. In fall 2010, we announced that we set up the Wuxi Critical Mechanical Components. That name itself is very long, but one of the things you'll learn if you set up an operation in China, you don't get to pick your name. You get to suggest the name, and then the government will help you pick the name. And the local government of Wuxi really insisted that we would have Wuxi in the name, and they didn't understand mechanicals, so we added components. We have operations in Wuxi, and we have operations in Qingdao. The Qingdao government was okay with us keeping the name Wuxi, so we're fine, they're fine. We set up the operation extremely quickly. What we make, by the way, if it can fit on the table, we don't make it. Everything we make is very, very large scale, as I mentioned, and very, very precise. And what we learned, and Joel hit it right on the nose, is doing business in China, you can find lots of companies from China and say, no problem, we want to partner with you, we can make this. We can make this. Thousands of companies will come to you and say they can make it. The reality is they can make the first one, and they'll make the first one very well, and they'll make it at a phenomenal price. Then you give them an order for a second one and a third one. And maybe the second one will show up and maybe it won't. And maybe the quality will be good, maybe it won't. And again, excellent point, you have a contract, you have specifications, and you have designs. They're meaningless. They are absolutely meaningless. There is expectation, and you need to manage the expectation with a partnership with people you trust. And if drawings have a dimension and it isn't made that way, hopefully your business relationship will manage that expectation and you'll get the product you want. We realized that very quickly. Today we're adding 9 expats that live full-time in Wuxi, in Qingdao, to help manage the operations and manage expectations. The products we produce are extremely high quality because we're there every day managing that. The customers are very happy for that. It's an investment. You cannot run or partner via email and phone calls from Massachusetts. It's not going to work. You have to be there, you have to participate with them and work on this expectation. We're extremely pleased. We're much smaller in scale than the gentleman to my right, but China for us will represent about 20% of the company's revenues. By next year, probably closer to 60% of the revenues. As I mentioned, we're in clean tech, which is primarily solar and wind. As you know, 90+% of the world's solar panels come from China. And as China, as a government, has made a practice to buy up all the rare earth materials, so do all the wind turbines. So we participate in that clean tech sector urgently there. The next sector will be advancing as we complete the certifications will be nuclear. China has announced 26 AP1000 nuclear reactors. Several of the components we make for Westinghouse at Westminster are exported. By reactor 3, it's the precedent that there will be no more exports. So we have to get our certifications in line in a timely manner. So it's been a wonderful experience, but much the same experience as Joel. Contracts are not as important as managing the expectations in person. And I think I have 240,000 miles, so we're very good. Thank you.
Thank you, too. I have a couple things that came out of the discussion points here. One of them is the importance of relationships with people and understanding that relationships. The question that comes to my mind when you go into this is, how do you first develop this relationship? How do you go about finding someone to develop a relationship? And how much time did it take for you to find a trusting relationship with someone there that you could use to sell your products over there? And maybe George can start out saying, how would an organization go about developing a relationship in China initially?
First of all, I am a professional, so I did not direct deal with my business counterpart like James and Joe did. But I developed my relationship pretty much through my local connections, my longtime friend, and some, like you said, alumni, and more on my Chinese network through the business association in the United States. So one of the most important connection I used in the US was buyusa.com, which is built up by US Department of Commerce. In there, all the people who are willing to do business with China register their company's name over there. They want to do many, many things. Then the other side, the counterpart is China National Development Association. They have a national category published which industry they support, which industry need the investment. Then you match with these two, who are the buyer, who are the supplier, then you cross in. So you find your nice place to do yourself. That's my personal experience.
Gabe, what was your experience when you first started developing it? And the issue of relationship, I'm not sure if you mentioned relationship in your discussion at points.
Well, I mentioned that we had licensee, but that was chosen by contact, and that was early '80s. And now, looking in retrospect, we can pretty easily say, well, that was not a good idea. But if you were sitting, or any of us, in 1980, not too many people had the vision of what China would be today in 1980. And we started that relationship, and of course, you know, that didn't work. But the very fruitful relationship we did have was in the early 90s. And we met our key contact in China that became our agent initially through trade fairs local. So basically, the typical technical conferences in the local market, you know, that's where we have met. And I think that the relationship gets formed when you do business and you begin developing business, and when you see this person basically being pretty effective in that market. And that was our experience, and I think that if I have to stress on the key success, we were very successful in our industry. We were the market leader in China in our sector, and was based on having the right person on board. It was also our philosophy was always more that it's better to have someone that is local, that you can train into the culture of the company, versus having someone that is from the company going into a foreign market and train them into the local expectations and customs and language and everything else. So for us, that was pretty effective, and that's how we found the relationship. And then this gentleman, then we moved into forming our own subsidiary there.
If I can follow up on that, when you said that you found somebody local, and I think this was also mentioned by Ken Brown, finding someone local there, did it take away some of your business in the United States when you sent the products over there? That's
a fear that existed back then and still exists today. When we have operations here in Worcester, and when you talk about China, everybody, I think, is paranoid about losing all their jobs and keeping, you know, everything secret. There is some validity to that. However, our experience has been that because we established our China operation, and right now we have about 1,200 people. We do in China about 600 million per year as a metals technology. And basically what you see is that you expand into businesses that you have not been before. Some of the component or pieces of equipment that we used to do or we still do here today, we have continued to do here. And in China, we have put other pieces of equipment. And some other businesses, we had to invest in China to be part of that market. So if we were not there, I mentioned we have 500 million tons of, you know, installed capacity. If you were not local there, we would not have access to such a market. We could never have touched it from here. So I think that, you know, our experience has been the opposite. By going into China, our business has exploded overall, not that we have taken from here to put there.
not a zero-sum game or just a piece of the pie. You grew the pie.
That's enlarged the pie.
Yeah. Joe, what about your experiences with the relationship, the initial relationship building? I know that you used Clark to help with the cultural things, but was that the only way that you went about that?
So after I gave this actually thinking about how that it's not important to learn a language, I'll tell you one of the few Chinese words that I know is guanxi, right? And it means building a network, having a relationship, and depending on your network to help you get to the next level or to meet people. And I can't think of a country where that's more important than China. So you just can't walk in on your own. To give you an EMC example, in around 2004 timeframe, we were doing, at that point, all of our assembly either in the United States or Cork, Ireland. And we were getting pressure from the Chinese government that if we wanted to sell more, we should build more there. Now, we weren't interested in building ourselves and opening up a new factory. So we knew that we needed to find a Chinese partner. At that time, we had a business relationship with Dell. I called up my counterpart at Dell, and I said, can you help us out? Are you doing assembly there? Are you doing engineering there? And it turned out they were doing assembly with a very well-known company called Foxconn. Foxconn is based in Shenzhen, which is kind of the manufacturing center in high tech in China. And he introduced me to a local representative for Foxconn in the Boston area. And we went through an interesting experience for the next year. We tried to convince Foxconn that we were good enough for them to build our products. At that time, they were building for Hewlett-Packard, they were building for Dell, they were building for Apple, but they didn't know much about storage, they knew less about us, and in fact, the first two bids that the procurement office sent to them, they turned them down. And I went back to my friends at Dell and I said, I was pleading with them, please convince them that we're okay guys, that we're for real. Today we laugh about this, my friends at Foxconn and I. We do close to $400 million of business with Foxconn. They're our major assembly supplier for us. They go, and those products go from there into our various facilities around the world. But it all started with this relationship using Dell to provide the introduction for me. I'll tell you one other little brief story. A couple years ago, I was reading The Economist. I'm not a regular reader of The Economist, so I can only tell you, probably someone sent me an article. And in that article, it talked about doing business in China, and it mentioned an Irish fellow, who lived in Shenzhen and considered himself the Western czar of Shenzhen. So somehow I did some work and got his name and called him up. And I said, I'm going to be in Shenzhen in a couple months. I'd like to come and meet you and understand more about your experiences and everything else. Anyway, he's been there for about 10 years, started an assembly operation. But when I got to know him, the most interesting thing that I found out about him was that Shenzhen there's 1 million factories in the area. Almost all of them are unlocked. Right? And so when you drive by, you have no idea what they do. You don't even know what the company is. Just see, if you happen to go there at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, you see people coming in and out. You have no idea what's going on. Right? He had a map that he showed me on a computer that had the names of all these companies and what they did. And he had accumulated that intelligence himself and through some of his employees over this 10-year period. And what he did was he made himself available for a fee. So if you were a US-based company and you wanted to build little precision parts or balloons or anything else, he knew where to send it. And he made more money on his fees doing that than he did through his own assembly operation. And he was Irish, and he spoke Chinese. So again, networking and depending on people to provide introductions for you, my experience is really the only way of doing business. But certainly get started.
Jim, did you see the Guangxi issue arise when you were trying to develop a relationship early on?
Not so much. I mean, we were fortunate to hire a couple of years ago a young man who was hired by one of the large companies in Massachusetts to outsource manufacturing and knew the area pretty well, and he was able to get us in front of the right audience. We're also a public company, and one of our shareholders also had a friendly relationship. So that call that Joel was mentioning to Dell saying, please tell them we're nice guys, that kind of was already passed because we had the introduction, but sometimes it's very much like that. You have to convince them you're a good group of people to work with. So we were pretty lucky on both organically and inorganically getting going pretty quickly.
Let me shift from a cultural issue to a legal, economic type issue, political issue. In terms of being able to do business there, did you find that you faced any barriers, economic barriers, tariffs, that were legally on the books that you had to overcome, and how did you manage that aspect of doing the international trade. And we'll start with Gabe and then move to George and just shift the order around a little bit.
Well, as I said, we established or we got connected with this very well-connected Chinese, was Hong Kongese, educated, and basically living in Shanghai. And really we depended on him to build the initial company. And on the contrary, I think that we got every possible tax advantage to set up our companies. We even, our exports from here to China, and basically they were done through Hong Kong into China, and there were some tax advantages. So we formed a company in Hong Kong, and we were doing it that way. We have a factory in Shanghai that is probably now 600 people. This factory, basically there were 5 different companies within the factory when it was created. Since then, now in the last 3 years, we have been Siemens. Some of this has been dismantled because there is Siemens is very concerned about compliance and whether or not there is, and we're taking advantage of some tax rule that we're not supposed to. But we were not concerned being Morgan at the time, but Siemens is a lot more in the spotlight, and all those companies have been now dissolved. But when they were formed, basically, every time you formed one company, you had advantages of not paying taxes for 10 or 15 years, depends on the business you're in. So there were a lot of incentives, and basically, but again, I don't think anybody from here, from our operation in the U.S., could have gone and achieved what the Chinese person did for us, and impossible.
George, you mentioned the incentives, taxes, and those issues. What insights can you give about how that works out for a company trying to do business in China?
I'll be honest, I receive this kind of phone call, not to say every day, but 3 or 5 times a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. Okay, let's look back a little bit. From 1979, when the Chinese government and the Communist Party started to open the door policy and the economic reform, China economy has gone through significant change by volume, by dollar, by the GDP, by whatever the measure you can use it. So to encourage foreign direct investment, the China government implemented a serious tax incentive. I think, Gabriel, your company is taking advantage of great deal of this policy to help your company build up the business over there. The critical question for U.S. business to success is to do your own homework first. I would like make a little bit of comments in response to Joe Schwartz's comments. They found that their business partner in Dell through then come across to Fox. I have another issue with the U.S. leading semiconductor manufacturer in the United States. Excuse me, I cannot name it, but the reason I said here is the legal and illegal issues. Okay, the story came in 2008 in Shanghai. Municipal government announced a particular region saying, hey, I designated this parcel of land by 4 times 6 square kilometers to designate scientist zones. All the technology companies come to build up their research R&D center over there. That particular semiconductor, leading company of the world trusted the Chinese government. They spent 2 years and 6 months, 2.5 years to build up a relationship to set up the R&D center over there with involvement of Microsoft. Then another Chinese man coming in, just like you said, he demonstrated to the company, I have a gigantic relationship in China, blah, blah, blah. Can you move your facility to Chengdu? Okay, then the company already started the process, interview, they hired 400 engineers, software programmer, another 360, totally almost 1,000 employees, highly educated. The first class of China University, Tsinghua, Shanghai Jiao Tong Universities, blah, 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 blah. Now that might jump into the deal saying, hey, I help you to move to Chengdu. I have another piece of land over there. You move your investment over there. I can give you 10 years tax, free. Whatever the transfer pricing and the technology and blah, 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 everything move there. Okay, and the US decision makers say, that's a good deal to come full from the sky. Why not take it? So they decided to move the facility to Chengdu. After they hired the same number of employees, they still, every little bit looks perfect, but working culture is totally different. In Shanghai, pretty much westernized. They do whatever you tell to them. Then over there, every day, people come 9 o'clock, leave at 5 o'clock, and they have afternoon tea, they have a dim sum bring in the bookshop, so you have smell full of everything. The efficiency you expect to save the lane comes down. So after 2 years of operation, in the 2010, I was called up saying, hey, George, can you help me figure out how to solve this issue? I said, hold on a second. I educated 20, 30 people, I can do it. But I really do not have the power to educate 1,000. Then Chengdu city is more than 6 million people over there. How I can educate is a cultural difference. You tell me this is legal, illegal. You tell me this is benefit driven, or you tell me it's incentive driven. It's a wrong decision. So now this company is facing a decision. You keep the investment over there, or you pull it out. And it costs the CEO the career life if you made these poor decisions. Then the other issue is, if you look at this business decision as a professional point of view versus a medical point of view, you have to weigh out which way is more important. You pinpointed to this Chinese man with a collection company, giving you the grant free land usage and 10 years in tax incentive. So what the hell are they going to do the business? Don't get me wrong, I just give you a life experience. That happened in our US society. So from me, I'm a Chinese native and a US citizen, I look at this, how I can tell them. I can only tell them is you can scale back gradually. You cannot pull out more than $10 billion of investment, at least the first initial almost approximately 985 million is being invested. So what the hell are you doing? Because the whole position is build the first class of semiconductor manufacturing facility with the R&D support over there. If next semiconductor chips are going bigger and bigger, the function is faster and faster. That's the way. And who is? Don't tell me. Don't ask me to point out who this person is. I cannot tell you. That's what I mean.
Joe, do you want to follow up that?
Glad the answer is
Well, first of all, from our perspective, when we look at R&D, we decide where we want to go. If we get tax incentives, that's great. We get other incentives, that's great. But the leverage we get from having the right people doing the right thing in the right place is so much greater than any tax benefits. But quite honestly, we totally ignore them. Secondly, particularly in R&D, many times the governments, I can think of St. Petersburg, Russia, as a good example. When we first went there, the government, we were almost convinced that we wanted to open up an R&D facility there. And we were meeting with some of the government officials, and they started telling us about this wonderful location that they were going to build that high-tech park and everything else. And as we investigated, and we were going to get all kinds of tax benefits by being there, as we investigated, we found out that it was quite far from the center of the city. It had no real infrastructure in place. The students in many of these facilities, a large percentage of our initial population are recently graduated students. The students had no interest in going there, and the list went on and on. And yet, when we were dealing with the the government just kept saying tax incentive, tax incentive, tax incentive. And they couldn't understand why we made the decision to go right down into downtown St. Petersburg. But we knew that was the place we were going to get the people. That's where the students wanted to come to work, and that was so much more important to us. With regard to Chengdu, there are two reasons we're expanding, and we're expanding. We're not closing down in Shanghai or Beijing. The first is Chengdu is an important target for us from a business perspective. We want to expand our business in Chengdu, and it was clear in dealing with the local government officials that they favored companies who were doing R&D in the city. And the second most important reason is it's the best Szechuan food in China.
Joe, I follow up with you a little bit. To my knowledge, because Chinese government in the 1970 against the Soviet Union, they move all the Chinese sophisticated military base, arsenal-based company, move into the southwest region, mainly focusing in Sichuan province. So this is a movement to bring a lot of immigration from China, different provinces into there. When the family getting older, they raise the kids, receive the first class education. They really have a rich labor force available, high educated, low salaries Chinese student. I look at all the Chinese face here. I hope they will going back and have a brighter future than these people are. So because they make more money, find a decent job. Then the question over there is you have a very nice environment, very nice, Chinese government encourage foreign investment over there. However, there's a significant cultural difference. Even I am one for Chinese native. I cannot fit myself in the right place over there. Nothing cheap, just tell you this the truth. The question I really appreciate is like Joe said, you weigh more important the business center than the tax incentive. This is a big decision. I'm glad to hear from you. I'm surprised, but I very appreciate it.
Don't tell your Chinese friends now.
No, I
Great deals.
I'll be in shape, so don't worry about it.
I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit, gentlemen. Now, we've talked about doing the business and how you set up the facilities over in China and all the different rules and regulations or cultural things. What happened in the United States? How did your organization in the U.S. change? Or what happened in the U.S. when you started doing business and expanding over in China? Were there additional jobs developed? Did you have to set up a structure, a bureaucracy in your U.S. areas to be able to manage this relationship in your economic development? Jim, I think we'll start with you this time.
First, we had to manage it with the employees that were in our Westminster. This company's been here for 56 years. And when they were announced that GT and Westinghouse are going to go to zero exports from Massachusetts, they were in a panic. But what we showed them in short order is after we announced the China operation and started doing business, we were approached by many more and new customers that Rayner never did business with for 56 years. I think you mentioned you were at Vico. Vico was one of the companies that came from this very large company looking for our precision large-scale products and asked a simple question, we've been around for 56 years, why now? And they said, because you opened up your operation in China. We only want to deal with companies that understand how to do business globally. And we use that as an example to train the workforce that, hey, don't panic. There are realities about how much we really are exporting and how much is being borrowed in technology, but it is also creating jobs. So we're seeing many new customers come to us because we now have a global presence where before we were just a local presence.
And Gabe?
I think, the development of our China operation has, there was tremendous support from our Worcester facility and expertise going to China. And this has been from manufacturing, from quality, tremendous amount of, manpower from here went there. We have had expat for many, many years. So, and our standard of quality in our Chinese factories is equal as our standard of quality in U.S. Or any global company. At the same time, we are very careful, one of the sensitive issues in China today, and will continue to be, is intellectual property protection. And many of our process know-how, our process engineering know-how, still resides here. We made that decision many years ago. We think that that was the right decision, because basically we still have that core technology. We have two competitors. Basically, our pieces of equipment coming from Worcester went to China, and today there are probably 35 operating rolling mills from ex-Morgan technology. There are probably 70 Chinese-made copycats of that technology. So basically, and this was, for us was always, IP protection was the key. But even with that, our equipment, when it arrived in site, was fully disassembled, fully reverse engineered, fully measured, and basically, tried to imitate. Never have come to the same quality. So there were things that we did, going back to the question, that will cooperate strongly, and we built a lot of quality of that, manufacturing expertise, all of that. In other areas, we have tried to get IP protection here, and I'm interested to have an offline conversation with Joel about their R&D moving into China, that we have never taken that step.
Joel, would you like to respond? Not that issue particularly, but if you want to, the intellectual property, or just...
When the first issue raised, certainly when we started to think about expanding our R&D efforts overseas, there was a lot of concern. I remember the first discussions we had with some of our employees. I remember being accused of being un-American, and kind of made me feel pretty bad, because I like to think I'm a pretty good American. And when you hear it from people that you respect and that you work with, you think about it. But if I look at where we were then versus where we were now, our company is about 3 times larger. We were $6 billion. We're finished this year about $20 billion. We have more than twice the number of people doing R&D in the United States now that we had then. And oh, by the way, we got a big chunk of our R&D outside of the United States, which allows us to understand and understand the local markets, take advantage of the talent. The talent in Massachusetts in high tech is different than the talent on the West Coast. That's why we have West Coast operations. To take advantage of the Berkeley and the Stanford and the other interesting and important high-tech schools, just like we take advantage here of WPI and Northeastern and MIT and Clark. I gave you a pretty good commercial.
Yeah.
And so the same thing applies around the world. In order for us to be a successful company and grow our business, we need to understand and take advantage of the talent and understand the markets in other places around the world. Ken and I were just recently in Israel, Governor Thatcher's trade mission there. And the first place they happened to visit was EMC, our operations there. We have about 500 people doing R&D in Israel. And the head of our operation talked, and we had guest speakers from other high-tech companies, and we all talked about how their business in Massachusetts was growing as a result of the R&D that we were doing in Israel. So I'm sort of over the guilt complex. I have the facts, all right, and the facts are that being a global company is going to make your company more successful. As far as the IP goes, it's always an issue. Of course, it's always a concern. And you do your best to set up mechanisms to make it difficult for people to do illegal things. But it can just as easily happen in the United States. Reverse engineering didn't get didn't get invented in China. Okay, I can remember in my early days of being in the high-tech industry. In fact, EMC started its business in the late 70s and the early 80s, building added memory boards to go in prime computer and digital equipment computers. So rather than buying your memory from the computer manufacturer, they offered it at a less expensive price. In order to do that, they had to do reverse engineering. Now, they tried to do it without breaking any patents, but in fact, a couple companies did sue them. So this has been going on for a long time. It's not restricted to China, and if you got to worry about it no matter where you are.
Okay, let me go to the last portion of our moderation here and get right into the future in terms of what do you foresee in the future in doing business in China, both from a risk perspective and a rewards perspective. And because some companies right now, like American Superconductor and Devon's, for example, has had difficulties. Do you think there's going to be these types of risks? And with the expansion of the Chinese economy and the opening up, and I think their next 50-year plan includes an opening up from a liberty perspective as well. Do you see this impacting how you do business in China in the next, let's say, 8 to 10 years? And George, would you like to begin on that?
Okay. I personally think I very like it. Ken Brown made a comment called interdependence. Up to current stage of China economy development, the entire economy getting bigger and bigger. I saw the more U.S. enterprises and entrepreneurs go to China doing business. I really like to see the company, manufacturing company and the high technology company located in Massachusetts to going to do business with China, going on a more frequent basis. Take advantage of University, Harvard, and MIT located in your particular state. You have so many students over there. These people are carrying the knowledge, experience, whatever they learn back to China, which service your future footprint, one step into the door. That's my view. And second thing, I view that certain industries really important in United States and in China. U.S. need to create more job. China need to have a more advantage technology. I see the West Coast, the aerospace industry and the airplane manufacturing industries. I can see it was lifted by the export to China. I ask myself, what the Massachusetts states can do? What kind of product you can export? Not only steel mill and not only data storage and not only precise the ovens. There's many other things you can do, but I don't know. I need to walk along with you to find out what they are. Number two, in China, there's a lot of things you need to pay attention to. And from normal business view, from auditor view to look at it, you cannot have a customer-centric concentration. If you have a single customer account for you more than 50% of the revenue, you are in business risk. If you lost this customer, your business collapses. And even you go to China, now most people, the strategy discussion is some large company set up a separate division, separate company, devoted to the United States called so-and-so company. For instance, China. Then even they go to bankrupt, then the business fail, they only limited the future damage to this particular entity. You can call this a tax strategy, you can call this business decisions, but before you go, you have the idea how to control risk. This really depends on management. No matter what a consultant will tell you, whatever your connection tell you, that's not represents your benefit. That's not your business. Your business is based on your own understanding. I really enjoy what Schwartz said. You have to be there, then you understand what kind of a risk you are taking. And the reward is obvious. And let me flip the coin the other way for, say, foreign direct investment. The China economy grow. They accumulate 2 trillion foreign reserve. How can solve these issues? Because the local government They have a 2 trillion foreign currency reserve in their pockets. They need to issue equivalent RMB currency in the market, which meaning, let's say, times 7. We have a 14 trillion currency on the market. Now, if domestic people can consume this $14 trillion, they need a more consumable. On the other side, the foreign direct investment, they need to spend this $2 trillion. They need to come here. Then that way, the two countries, the economic relationship, cooperation, getting tighter and tighter. We cannot damage each other. We can only work each other. We cooperate, but we compete in certain sector of the industry. Whichever segments you are in, you will be compete. I give you a very typical example. One company located in Southern California. That is not my firm's client, but I still don't want to release the client's name. And this company doing business in telecommunication and the data transformer. They manufacture high connector between the fiber cable between all the way in China. Then U.S. government, U.S. industry needed that. Their industries exactly fit Obama's build up more infrastructure case. Then China has built 8 vertical and horizontal fiber cables. Then this connector leading the cable over the ocean, come on the shore, connected with the cable on the China line. You see how bright the future this company is. Then the risk is huge. You have IP issues, you have personnel issues, how smart your business decision is, and plus the funding issues. If you seek this kind of industry, I hope everybody in this position. But 1 out of 10,000 probably this company in this kind of position. That's the future, but the risk is there, reward is there too.
Thank you. Gabe?
The issues of concern that I have in China is, or China-related issues, is of course IP is a big issue. We have had experience where we have a particular patent of a product that is recognized worldwide in the most prestigious patent offices like Japan, like European Community, US, yet in China that patent was canceled unfairly. And that's where we wish our government was a little more connected, because we did involve our government and we didn't get anything done really. So IP from protecting our IP. The other issue going on in IP today is there are a tremendous amount of Chinese companies registering IP that exists in the rest of the world as unique in China. So that is basically existing technology that exists in the rest of the world that in China is being registered as being totally innovative, and they are seeking patent protection that will make our job is much more difficult to sell in China. So I see that the IP issue is not going in the direction that we wish to have going. The second concern I have in China, and in particular in cities like Shanghai where we're operating, we set up our China operations for 2 reasons. One is to access that market, but the second reason was due to a cost issue to supply the global market. And the costs, in particular in Shanghai, they're rising astronomically. In the last 10 years, they have gone up tremendously, and I think it's a direction that logically will continue. So the cost, if I were to set up a new manufacturing facility today, I would not be setting up in China. I'd probably be setting up in Vietnam or some other country that is lower cost, if I'm doing it for cost reasons, not for access to market. And the third issue that is a byproduct of China that we will deal, companies like ours will deal, is in all those companies in China that are competitors. They all want to become global. And basically European companies, US companies like ours that have, let's put it this way, in the sophisticated market, dominated that market globally. The biggest challenge that we will have is that all those Chinese companies are coming globally, competing with us, and that is really a tough competition. As far as opportunities, the way we are moving forward is we are trying to expand our business in what is called the M3 market. And in Siemens, we divide the markets in what is called M1, which is the sophisticated, you would put it like a pyramid where, you know, they put sophisticated, a lot of features, products are in M1 and 2. And M3 are also good quality products, but with less features that basically, traditionally, companies like ours and Siemens, we have not accessed that market. In China, we sell to the big steel companies, Bao Steel, all those companies, but there are many second or third tier companies that we don't sell to because the products that they're looking for we don't have. So we are looking into transferring engineering, R&D, and the complete business operation to China for the M3 market. And I think it's a market that we don't touch today, and that is, as we see today, the greatest opportunity for expansion.
Thank you, Gabriel. Joel?
When we look at China over the next few years, in our business, the information infrastructure, primarily storage, the companies that do market research in this field, IDC, Gartner Group, and a few others, all predict that in 5 years, China will be the second largest information technology market in the world. 5 years. More specifically to us, over that 5-year period, they predict that a third of all the world's growth in the products we sell will be consumed in China. So 5 years, number 2 market. Next 5 years, 1/3 of all the growth. Today, we're a $20 billion company. We'll do about $400 million in China. Do the math, that's about 2%. So the second largest market in the world, we're doing in 5 years. Today represents 2% of EMC's revenue. We got a lot of work ahead of us. The CEO of the company has set up a task force, which I run, and it's called Making China our second largest domestic market. I don't have 5 years to come up with all the answers, and for sure our team won't have all of them, but we're going to have a few of them, and we're going to be starting to implement some of them in the near future. And these have to do with organization. What kind of functions do you base? It's going to be your second domestic market. What kind of functions do you base in the country? What do you do about manufacturing operations there? The list is relatively long in nature of all the things that we're looking at. Designing whole products there. Again, weren't at the same time worried about all the IT issues. But we can't exist as a company in 5 years when China is the second largest market, have it represent 2% of our revenues. This will not compute. It will not happen. Something else will happen, but that won't happen. I'll finish by saying, to show you how important it is to EMC, in all the years our board of directors have had board of directors meetings, they've always been in the United States. They've always been here in Hopkinton. Last year they went to London for the first board of directors meeting outside of the United States. Our next board of directors meeting is in Shanghai in the next 60 days.
Jim?
Yeah, the 2 comments on for IP. I had an interesting conversation with one of our largest customers, and they said, be careful. This is a new product, and be careful with these drawings and how we control it. We give all our customers codes, and only we know what the codes are, and all the drawings have codes. And I kept saying, I know you're really paranoid about your drawings, but when are we shipping the first unit? And so we're shipping the first unit. We need it to ship next month. They said, well, that's when you worry, because they don't want the drawings. They don't need designs. When that first product arrives, I think we heard the comment about the roll. It's reverse engineered so quickly you can't even possibly imagine. And then, there's nothing you can do about it. And so know that going in, that's a reality. And GTAT, not far from here, faced that reality when they announced their DSS furnace within a year, there were 2 identical copies of it to the pink color. That's the way it is. And there's nothing this government's going to do, our government can do to change that. And please know that's a reality. As far as growth goes, I share everyone else's sentiment. As I mentioned, this will be about 20% of our revenue will be China. I foresee that going to at least 60% within the next 12 months. It is a very large market. The government and the policies implemented in China, it is mind-boggling if you spend time there. When they see a market or a market trend that they want, like solar, like wind, and nuclear, and they want it not only for export purposes, but for their own consumption. I mean, 26 nuclear reactors is a lot compared to the 2 we're building here in the States. They don't want to import that. They want to find a way to make that, and by partnering with companies like ours to make it there. So please understand, they put policies in place not to import more, but to build it with internally, and that's why China is such a critical role for us, because we understand their policies, their government, and their desires to build it with there. And if you're successful to set up an operation, and I think what we've done is very successful, it's going to grow, and it's going to be growing at a tremendous rate. But their goal is not to import. The goal is to figure out how to make it domestically by partnering with companies such as ours.
Thank you, Jim. I think we've had a lot of fertile discussion where a number of questions can arise. We'll take a few questions from the audience at this point. If anybody has a question to any one of our panelists or all of our panelists, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll recognize you. We have a microphone as well if you want a microphone. Are there any questions? We have one over there. Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, my name is Helen Lee with AC Growth. Actually, our company is to help the U.S. company export to China, access to China market. I see all the audience today is excellent. You talk about experience when you put your footprint in China market. I don't know about crowded here. I think that to me is my past experience is first many small companies, especially small companies. First they ask question whether my products or service are needed in their market. Yes, EMC, no problem, that's no question. Another guy, your nuclear product is no question. But for major, if your product is niche market, just then first thing is whether my product are needed in China. And that's is my past experience, especially for small or medium company. First question to answer. That's the first question before you do further investment. Because it is true, the entry barrier to China it is high. And also we talk about trust relationship, which is hard to build in that country. So that's why I mentioned that I found that many we talk about is all something especially to cover the small business is how to help them. Is first is help them to identify. To answer the question, first, whether my product are needed in that market. Second is how big, the size, and whether it worth me to put my foot to that market. So that's the company we call the AC Growth. Basically, is really to help small company to answer the first question before you do any other work. You need to know you get, for example, you put your product, your keyword, all of that into China's search engine. For example, like China Baidu, which is 85% of market share, similar like Google, okay, but 85% market share. You put your product, your keyword in the China search engine, you get the answer. See, it's needed or not. If not, then just don't go there. It's still not worth it.
So the question you have is how can a small company, small business get their foot in the door in China? And you mentioned the internet is one resource or trying to get that initial resource. Would anybody like to respond to that? I think, George, you have experience with both large and small companies. Is that true, or is it mostly large companies?
I do most middle size to the large company. Sorry, I don't know the stock company, but I give you one of my little experience. I received a phone call from our alliance firm in Middle West, and they are talking about some stuffed products, which like teddy bear and
Stuffed toys.
Stuffed products. They are trying to sell to China, and China is famous to manufacture these companies, but on the folding labels, either Disney or the other labels, like you said, license, OEM basis. But I asked the question to the other side and said, okay, if you ask me that, I need 2 more questions. You ask who raised the question. The first, your product is unique or satisfy Chinese taste. Number 2, do you know where your current products sell? You sell in the souvenir, in the tourist point, or you sell in the urbanized, whatever the stores are located. I try to provide a little bit more inspiring to thinking. When you small business want to do business within China, then you really need to identify where you're unique and where your selling point. If you can answer that too, then we find the other side in China with your business partner who is willing to cooperate with you or import your product to China from their point of view, sell to Chinese market. I think that in this case, I saw a lot of Japanese firms doing very well in Shanghai. That's responded to you.
Any other insights from small business doing business in China?
Other than I think it would be very difficult for a small business to want to export unless it really, really, really is a niche that they don't know how to make or can't make once they receive it. I think it's very difficult.
Okay. So finding the right niche is a secret in that situation.
Absolutely.
Joe, can I jump in on this one?
Yeah, I was wondering, that's why I looked at you when I said small business.
So I don't know if our partner from the Mass Export Center is here.
Yes, yes.
This is a perfect opportunity to get together, talk about, sit down, sort of a consultation, if you will, what your product is, potential markets in China. So why don't you two exchange business cards, get together. That's a simple thing. Also, I'm happy to have someone from Moidi sit down with you. And also mention, I think it was George mentioned the Department of Commerce or somebody did. They partner with us. I was at the Commerce Department. They are terrific. We have a great U.S.
There is somebody here from the Commerce Department as
We have
well.
a great U.S. Department of Commerce office in Boston, which we should hook you up with.
And I'm right here, so I can do that.
In any event, if you can all exchange business cards, I'll give you my card. We'll sit down and try to help.
Okay, there's a question over there. Sir?
Yeah, I'm from, my name is Amar Kapoor. I'm with AIMTech, and our experience, we are doing business with China. We are a small business, and we are doing business with China through companies that are here, like we are exporting to DuPont, China. So, that would be another suggestion for small businesses, if they can hook up with large businesses like you, who are doing business in China, and they can export through China. So this is an opportunity. Another opportunity in our aviation components that came up is because we are authorized repair and overhaul components for Pratt & Whitney engines. So Pratt & Whitney is in China, so we can, piggyback on that. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Any questions? Additional questions? You, sir?
Hi, I'm Joe Maher. I work with Magnum Ocean. We're one of those niche corporations. We're a small company in Devens, Massachusetts. We make linear motors, but we use them for transport and positioning. And so, and my role at the company is to work with the industrial products that are used for automation. And our goal is to develop, distribution in China. And like some of you started with the right contacts, I'm at this stage where I'm looking for how do you make those right contacts, and whatever specifics anybody here can help provide would be greatly appreciated. I'll chase them down. I'll go to the Shenzhen trade shows. We'll do the legwork, but whatever specific contact information you can help with would be greatly appreciated.
This is an interesting perspective here. A lot of your big companies, you also have suppliers that are smaller suppliers. Is there a way that your companies can utilize your supplier network to help them do business in China, or help your supplier network do business in China as well? Does that strengthen your situation? Do you help them with that? Do you help them develop things where they can supply the companies that you have in China as well?
We have an example of, we have a supplier of ours for our lubrication systems that they supply filters, basically, and we work partner with them in foreign markets, China one of them. And yeah, I think that there is a strengthening, and now typically our relationship with us is they do private labeling, so they use our idle labeling for business there, and we use their expertise, so it's a way of expanding into you know, other worlds, you know, like smaller companies. We do the same thing with another strategic partner, one of the supplier that is, we do condition monitoring for our equipment, and they have all the vibration monitoring technology, and basically we go, they're a domestic company, and we go globally using their expertise.
So you send them overseas to different
we
locations?
Go, yeah, we take over all the sales and marketing and all the business development for them globally.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Mika and I'm also a planning student of WPI. And actually I have a question, 2 questions actually. So the first question.
Here comes the microphone for you.
Okay, thank you. So the first question is, do you have any suggestions for students who want to go back and do business in China? And what industry do you think is very promising to enter? That's the first question. And the second question is, I know that one of you mentioned that the increasing cost of China, and that is why you maybe prefer to invest in Vietnam. So have you ever thought about some small cities in China, such as Wuhan, Shantou? This kind of cities, actually they have low cost too. So that is my 2 questions. Thank you.
I'll take a shot at the markets for students looking to go back, and what markets are growing at a tremendous rate. Nuclear and aerospace in China are growing at a tremendous rate. I think you just saw in the newspaper about General Electric's announcement. Westinghouse already made that announcement to support the 26 reactors. So there's 26 reactors would be about 150 years of job security. So I think you're good if you go into that sector. As far as your areas of size, we picked Wuxi because it's far enough away from Shanghai from a cost standpoint. The turnover rate is an issue. One of co-partner companies, non-competitor, actually set up very close to Shanghai in Suzhou. They will probably be shutting it down because their turnover rate is greater than 55%. So when you're moving closer to Shanghai, especially for products we make, it's a risk. So we like Wuxi, and it's not fun to get there, but we like the remote areas.
One last response. I realize that we're running over time by a few minutes here. Anybody else like to respond to that? Go ahead, Joel.
Well, I've been in high tech for a long time, and the only thing I can say about high tech, particularly IT, is that there's nothing that I know that says that all the growth that we've had in the last 50 years is going to stop next year. In fact, all I see it doing is continue to expand and grow and develop. So I have a real soft spot in my heart for IT, and the Chinese in particular are doing some really interesting things for not only multinational companies, but Chinese-based companies. And I think it's a great field, and if you've been interested in it, I encourage you. It's a great place to be in that industry.
Just touch on the cost issues. I agree, going into those other cities is an opportunity. I think it's a balance between cost and having a well-educated workforce. And so for sure you have a highly educated workforce in Shanghai area. We have moved into just 2 hours work from Shanghai into Taichan. You know, it's a lot more difficult to get good skilled labor. And so that's the issue and the balance.
Okay, George, you want to add anything at the end, or is this good enough?
Just in one sentence.
Okay.
For our fellow Chinese student, the best thing I suggest you to do to get as much practical experience as possible. No matter which area you study, if you look at me as an example, I am an accounting student, I'm an accounting professor, but I'm doing things really not really related to accounting only. So hopefully enrich your life, get as much experience as possible, diversify yourself in the knowledge basis. And why practical experience is so important? Because learning in the school is important in itself, but more important is learning how to deal with people and how to obtain the trust from the business society. It's more important than the skill sets you have currently. And the most important thing is honest, integrity, and you do whatever you seek to do. That's came from your life experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Agnes.
That wraps it up, folks. I don't think I've seen a panel, such a fantastic conversation, panel conversation like that in years. Let's give them all a rounding hand of applause. Thank you, Joe, for a terrific job facilitating this. I want to give special thanks again to BDO Clark University for their support. These events don't happen without them. For AIM, for the Mass Export Center, for Mass Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the Doubletree Hotel, Elevation Exhibits, Park Sierra Productions. We'll produce this on video. I think we've got everybody emails, and we'll give you sort of a link to some of that stuff. It's a fantastic conversation. I'm glad we had it here today, and there's just more to talk about in the future. We have a special book for all of our panelists. But thank you all, and hopefully the networking that we talked about and exchanging business cards can happen right now. Thanks again.